Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Hope you are well. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Okay, let's get things rolling. Where are my slides? Okay. All right, yes. Here we are. My house making a lot of noise here. I feel like it's scratching all over the table. All right, okay. Ready to get rolling. Okay, Assalamu alaikum. Let's see who we have. Hey, Assalamu alaikum, bro. How you doing? Karaoke music from 1083. Did they have karaoke music? 1083. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing good. Thank you so much for asking. We are doing okay. I love your content, by the way. You should continue with the work you're doing. Yes, inshallah. Planning to do a bit more as well, inshallah, in a few months. When my circumstances change, I'm going to try to go back to making some normal videos and maybe spend some time doing this full time. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so what have I got today to talk about? Again, just a reminder that these live streams, just they're simple sort of like get-togethers and me trying to share, some contemplation on the Qur'an, sort of trying to model, so to speak, how to go about, contemplating different things in the Qur'an and presenting it to you so you can have a look at it yourself. And hopefully some of you will come on and, share your own contemplations in the Qur'an, or even, I suppose, even better is, if people can come onto this live stream, maybe, view a few of them, and that gives them the confidence to, learn from the Qur'an by themselves, to contemplate it by themselves, and then, they don't ever need me, really, do they? That's the whole point. It's a sort of like these live streams are sort of trying to push away from this idea that traditional Islam gives, which is that whoever tries to interpret the Quran by themselves, he is wrong, even if he's right. They have these sayings, right? أخطأ ولو كان صواب. They say that whoever interprets the Quran according to their own opinion is wrong, even if they are right. Okay, which makes no sense, and it's of course just a way to monopolize religion. Okay, when we have the opposite in the Quran, which God tells us to contemplate the Quran, and whoever is not able to contemplate the Quran, a rhetorical question is given: is it because their own locks are on their own hearts, right? Only you can lock your own heart to stop yourself from being able to contemplate the Quran. So I thought I'd talk a little bit today about something which I mentioned. I don't know if it was last live stream or the one before that with a guest, somebody who came on. I think it was Sam from London. He usually goes by the name Sam from the UK. which is about the Qibla, right? And what did the Qibla reveal? So this is something about, it gives an insight into the history, okay? The whole issue of the Qibla, the change of the Qibla, the first Qibla, the second Qibla. And then I'm also going to be talking about, given my interpretation of that whole, there's a phrase which comes up in the verses about the Qibla, which is from wherever you exit, then turn towards the sacred house, right? From wherever you exit. And that, that phrase has caused some confusion with some people. They take that and they say, okay, then the Qibla can't mean the direction of prayer, which is what everybody has understood Qibla to mean, which is accurate, I think. So I'm going to talk about what that phrase is and what does it mean. Okay? All right, so let's get started. Assalamu alaikum. Hope you're well. Okay, so the first thing. So in the verses of the Qibla, just before they start, we have these two verses beforehand. And of course, part of the lead up to these verses is a lot of the history of Bani Israel, of the Jews. You have, it's in Surah Al-Baqarah. You have the whole incident of the Baqarah. You have some of the story of Musa, and then you have some speech about Ibrahim. Okay, and Ibrahim setting up the Kaaba and asking God to send among his descendants a messenger. So you have that whole build-up, and even before that, of course, you have Adam and Hawa in Jannah and the angels bowing them. So you have a lot of history coming up to this point. Okay, and then you have these two verses just before you get to the verses about the Qibla, about the change of direction. You have the first verse says, أم تقولون إن إبراهيم وإسماعيل وإسحاق ويعقوب والأسباط كانوا هودا أو نصارى قل أنتم أعلم أم الله. Or do you say that Ibrahim and Ismail and Ishaq and Yaqub and the descendants were Jews or Christians? Is that what you're saying about them? They came before, being Jews or being Christians. And it says, do you know better or does God know better? And who is more unjust than those who conceal testimony he has from Allah? And Allah is not unaware of what you do. So this is sort of telling the Jews at the time, Bani Israel, who were the majority of in Medina from Ahl al-Kitab. Do you say that those who came before were either this or that? And perhaps there's also an indication that there were some Christians in Medina as well, right? Because each wants to claim for themselves, right? The Christians want to claim Ibrahim, Ismail, Ishaq for themselves, and saying that they were like us Christians. They had some understanding maybe of the Trinity or some ideas like that. And of course, the Jews want to claim them for themselves. And here Allah is saying, do you say that, for example, Ibrahim was a Jew or Christian? No, he came before that. And this is repeated in other places in the Qur'an. Okay, so it's sort of, again, it's tying up the previous history. You could include with that Adam. Or do you say that Adam was a Jew or a Christian? Okay, so we're going back sort of in time to the previous prophets, and then even when speaking about Christianity and Judaism, the previous two great religions. Okay, and then the next verse of that, تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ. That is a nation which has passed on. Okay, those nations are gone now. The previous nations, they're gone. تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. It will have those nations will have the consequences of what they earned, and you will have the consequences of what you earned, and you will not be asked about what they used to do. Okay, so it's a nice tie-off. Why? Because now we come into this situation where there's going to be a change. There's going to be a change from one branch of Ibrahim's descendants to Ismail. Right, so the previous verses are all about the previous nations, especially Bani Israel and then Ibrahim. But their time for receiving revelation and what they did with them, or with that revelation, is done. So here, this verse is sort of saying that is a nation who has come before us. لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ, for them is what they have earned when they got their revelations, when they got their wahi, when they had, they had their chance, and for them is what they did with that. Okay, how they responded and what they acted and what they preached and everything that happened with that ummah and the revelations that they got, it's done, right? And now it's your turn. Okay, now it's your turn. Their time for receiving revelation, what they did with them is done. And now there's a new prophet from the other branch of Ibrahim, and so a new direction. Okay, and God will see what this ummah does. Okay, what his ummah, this prophet ummah, will do. For this ummah is what they will take on. Okay, but of course, when you have this change in direction, the whole change is sort of like a movement. Even the change in direction when it comes to miracles, right? So the previous prophets all received these physical miracles, whereas the prophet received, a new direction, right? He got the Qur'an. The Qur'an says the reason why we have not sent miracles, right, the ayat, is because the previous nations denied them. Even with those ayats, those miracles, they denied them, right? And so now we have something better, and that's why you have also among these verses a bit later are the verses about abrogation. Okay, and the abrogation is the abrogation of the signs. Okay, not about verses of the Quran. The abrogation of the previous signs of miracles, that's been abrogated, and God has brought something better, which is His own words. Okay, and I believe that the Quran is the only verbatim revelation that humanity has received from God, where the words themselves were chosen by God. The exception probably being the tablets of Musa, right? So the Torah and the Injil. Torah is just the law. The Injil is the spiritual teachings of Jesus. Okay, the good news, and the Quran though is the verbatim, quote unquote, words of God. Okay, so the fools will not understand this change. Okay, this going in a new direction, which is actually going back to the old way, and so that's why you have the next verse is about it says in general way, it says سيقول السفهاء من الناس ما ولاهم عن قبلتهم التي كانوا عليها. The foolish among people, among mankind, will say, what has turned them away from their qibla, which they used to be face, which they used to be upon, right? Why have they turned away from this qibla? Why has this change happened? Okay, why has this change in qibla happened? Now, of course, the qibla here is the direction of prayer, but also, again, if you're reading this sort of thematically, like I'm trying to do a little bit over here, we're talking about a whole change, right? We're talking about this change from this ummah, the previous ummah. We're talking about all of these previous prophets and their nations as an ummah. Okay, they have had what they had, and now you are going to have what you have, right? It's a new direction, a new change. Okay, a new prophet from a different line of Ibrahim, and a new revelation. Okay, so why has changed? Why is that now? Why has that direction changed? Why isn't God still using the Bani Israel, for example? Right? Why has it now gone on to the descendants of Ismail? Well, that's it, right? لله المشرق والمغرب. To God belongs the east and the west. He guides whoever He wills to a straight path. He guides whoever He wills to a straight path. Okay, so therefore we're supposed to be in that sense. We are the ummah which has is going through that change, right? We are the ummah that goes through this change of moving from the previous direction to the new direction. Okay, it starts with the old way in a sense and moves on with the new direction, right? We had the old qibla, and we also got the new qibla, right? And we didn't start directly with a new qibla, right? The Prophet did not start straight away with the new qibla. He didn't start straight away praying to Mecca. He was told to pray towards the old qibla first. Okay, so we have this change, right? We changed, we switched our qibla, and that is part of what makes us the bridge, right? What part of what can make you a bridge is that you are the person who's changed from one side to the other. You have become the middle. Okay, and so the next verse talks about that. It says, وَكَذَلِكَ, and thus have we made you a middle ummah. Right? So the previous verse was talking about how, to God belongs the east and the west. He guides whoever he wills. All right. And this is about the change in the Qibla. Right. There was an old Qibla, and now there's a new Qibla, and we have made that change. And in thus and that way, we are a middle ummah. Okay, we are a balanced ummah in between. And so the verse says, and thus we have made you a median or middle nation, community. وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس. Right, so that you may be witnesses over people, over mankind, over especially the previous nations. Okay, على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. And so that the messenger himself will be a witness upon you. He will witness this as well. So we are supposed to be a bridge to others, right? Being in the middle means you can be a bridge, okay? We are going to be the bridge between, and in a way we have, in a very big way, right? If you look at, the Christianity is very different from what Isa preached, right? Very, very different, okay? And whereas the Bani Israel, the Jews are very exclusive, right? There are very few of them. And we, the Muslims, have sort of been a bridge between that previous revelation of the Jews, which is mostly intact, to the rest of the world, right? We've taken sort of like the Islam, the Islam, the true Islam, which is in Judaism, and we've been that bridge, that middle, taken it to the rest of the world, and through us, through the Muslims, it has really basically encompassed every part of the world, hasn't it? Right, we've been this middle nation, this conduit, right? So we're supposed to be a bridge to others, okay, especially Ahlul Kitab, especially others from Ahlul Kitab. We're supposed to bridge that gap, okay? A bridge, not an ummah who dunks as is happening now, right? Dunking on Christians or Jews, or bodying them, these new things that way people are described as destroying them, all these kind of debates and stuff that people have. That's not what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be a middle ummah, right? A wasat ummah that tries to bridge that gap, okay? To bridge that gap for Ahlul Kitab between what they have of the sort of the corrupted versions towards the truer versions, even within themselves, right? We are supposed to help them rediscover as well their own following of the Torah and the Injil, right? We are supposed to encourage them to follow the Torah and Injil. The Qur'an actually encourages them to do that. Okay, it says to them, you have nothing unless you act upon the Torah and the Injil and what God has revealed to you. Okay, but that sort of like idea is lost now, right? You don't see Muslims really encouraging, trying to help the Christians used to have more faith, right? And a corrected faith in their own religions. Okay, it's all about quote unquote trying to destroy them. Anyway, so this is the main part. This all of that was sort of like background. But this is all still in the same verse. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا. And thus have we made you a middle nation, so that you may be witnesses upon mankind, and the messenger may be witnessed upon you. And in that same verse, it gives us the reason for the first Qibla, right? وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الْقِبْلَةَ الَّتِي كُنْتَ عَلَيْهَا إِلَّا لِنَعْلَمَ مَنْ يَتَّبِعُ الرَّسُولَ مِمَّنْ يَنْقَلِبُ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ. And we did not make the Qibla which you used to face, except that we might make evident, let it be known, إِلَّا لِنَعْلَمَ, except that we may know, and really means except so we can except that we can make it known. Okay, لِنَعْلَمَ, to show up. It's sort of like it comes up, when you have a flag, it's called a alam. A flag is a alam, right? It reveals something. When you have a flag on a ship, you're revealing the allegiance of that ship. Okay, you're putting the alam on it, لِنَعْلَمَ, so that we can make we can flag up, let's say, you can even say it in that, translate in that sort of way. And we did not make the Qibla, which used to be, except so that we might flag those who would follow the messenger from those who would turn back on their heels. Okay? Those who would follow the messenger from those who would turn on their heels. So this is the key thing here, which is following the messenger, right? This goes back a little bit to the streams we've done about obeying the messenger, not the message, right? The messenger himself. Okay, the messenger does not mean the message. Just like when we talk to the the opponents of the Qur'anist mindset, they will say following the messenger means following the hadith, right? And unfortunately, some of the Qur'anists make the same argument and they say following the messenger means following the message, the Qur'an. No, following the messenger means following the messenger, the person himself, whom God has sent to be his messenger, following him. Okay, and this is it's shown in this situation because, of course, there was no verses revealed about the first Qibla, right? Unless you believe that some verses of the Quran were revealed and then they got wiped away, okay, from people's memory, and they just got lost or abrogated in that sort of way. I'm not of that position, and the assumption here is that that is not true. Okay, so there was no verses of the Quran telling people to go with the first Qibla, right? Yet they were still supposed to follow the messenger, right? They're still supposed to follow the messenger himself. So that was the key thing, right? This change in Qibla tested who would follow the messenger from who would not. Why? Okay, that's the important question. Why would that be such an issue, right? To us, it doesn't seem like a big issue. To us, it doesn't seem like a big issue, and it isn't, right? And to many at the time, to some at the time, it wasn't a big issue, but for a lot, it was, and that's why the next part of the verse says, and indeed, it was difficult when كانت لكبيرة. It was a huge thing. It was a big deal. It was a big deal, literally kabira, big. It was a big deal, except upon those whom God guided. Except upon those whom God guided. It was difficult, except for those whom Allah guided. And then it says, of course, and never will Allah allow your iman, your faith, to be lost. Truly, God is with mankind, kind and merciful. So that last part is, of course, in reference to your faith in praying, right? So in your first Qibla, you prayed in a certain way. When the Qibla was changed, some might think, okay, what about our previous prayers that we did in a different direction? That's not going to be lost, of course. That was that faith, the acts you did in faith in the previous Qibla, in the previous direction, they're never going to be lost. Okay, so the key to trying to understand why this was an issue, why was the change in Qibla an issue? It's not an issue to us because we are looking in terms of hindsight, 2020 vision, where Islam prevailed, the Prophet prevailed, and Islam spread worldwide, etc. You have to sort of try to put yourself back at that time. Okay, don't look at this with any hindsight. Try to put yourself back in that situation in Medina, okay, where you're either an Arab or one of Ahl al-Kitab, one of the Jews living there at the time. Okay, Islam at the time has had no real success, right? Rather, you have the opposite. The Prophet and his followers were persecuted and driven out of Mecca, and now they are refugees in Medina. Okay, because this is, of course, Medina Surah. This was the first surah revealed in Medina. And in Medina, you have this sizable Jewish population who had been threatening the Arabs who accepted the Prophet. Okay, saying that when there's a Prophet coming, when he arrives, we're going to fight you and kill all of you. Right? That was it's mentioned, alluded to in the Quran itself, that idea, but it's also found in narrations. Okay, that the Jews in Medina used to sometimes have disputes with the Arab Medina, right? Khazari and Aus, the two tribes in Medina, the Arabs, and they would tell them, look, very soon a prophet is coming, and you just wait until that prophet comes, and you will see what we will do with you with that prophet. Okay, and that's part of the reasons which led the Arabs of Medina to actually accept the Prophet, right? Part of the reasons which led them to accept the Prophet is because they'd heard some of these things from their Jewish neighbors. They'd heard about it, right? So that so that's why when in the narrations, when the some of the Aus and Khazraj, they saw the Prophet preaching in Mecca in the Suq Riqaz, the sort of the market, they recognized, oh, this is the Prophet who the Jews have been talking about, right? Let's follow him before they do, and sort of like we'll be under him, and they can't use him against us, and they had these kind of thoughts as well. Okay, but so again, imagine you're there in Medina. Okay, you've now put a lot of the Arabs have put their lot in of the Prophet. Okay, and the Jews are there as well, and the Prophet has come. He's not a Jew, he's an Arab. Okay, and here he is, sort of like without any power, right? And in no way, like there's nothing outwardly easy to accept about him, right? That this is now the one with whom God is going to change the world. No, he's coming as a refugee. All of his companions are poor, right? They used to suffer and go hungry for many nights. So there were issues to make you doubt at the time. And put yourself again back in that time. Don't think of it as you are now, but put yourself back in that time. Imagine you just being one of the Arabs or the Jews there at the time, and we have this situation. This man has come from Mecca. He said he is this prophet, and you're sort of like, okay, following him. Some of you are, some of you are not. There's some lingering doubts. Okay. When he starts his masjid, he starts his praying. Where is he praying? He's praying towards Jerusalem. That's where he's praying. That's his first Qibla. That automatically is an issue, right? For some, that automatically is an issue. The first Qibla, we made it. God said he made it the first Qibla to see who would follow the messenger from who would not. And that goes in two ways. That goes in first, who will follow the messenger in the first Qibla. And secondly, who will continue to follow the messenger once the Qibla is changed. Okay, both of these could be an issue, right? In the first one, if you are Arab, okay, would you hold back because he's praying like the Jews? Otherwise you wouldn't. I mean, these are the Jews who have been, threatening you with this prophet, right? And now he comes and he's praying sort of like them and in their direction. Okay, is he going to be on their side rather than your side? Okay, is that a reason now you're saying, okay, no, I'm going to hold back because of that? He's praying towards Jerusalem. Why is he doing that? Why is he sort of like siding with the Jews? Okay, that could be an issue. Or maybe you will accept him because he's praying like the Jews. Okay, and if he wasn't, you wouldn't. You'd hold back. Because again, in this way, you're probably saying the Jews as the people of God, people whom God has sent revelation to. Okay, and they are not Arabs, right? So they're sort of neutral in terms of the dispute between the Aus and the Khazraj, right? It's not going to be as a tribal issue, okay? And so maybe you look at it in that sort of way. And some of them, I think, had an inferiority complex towards the Jews, right? In terms of religion, they saw them as people of Ahlul Kitab, of scripture, who had revelation, who had previous prophets, etc. And so perhaps some of them wanted to be like that. You say the prophet is going to make us like the Jews, basically, right? So in him praying the same way as the Jews in the same Qibla, that's encouraging. Okay, so yes, okay, I'll follow you because you're doing this. Okay, and if you're one of the Israelites, sorry, this didn't format very well. Let's see if I can fix that. Yeah, there we go. If you're one of the Israelites, do you just see him as copying you? And you say, okay, this is the Arabian prophet. He's come. Okay, he's not Jew. Why should I follow him? Okay, look, he's even praying in the same direction we pray. There's nothing new which he has to offer. Okay, there's no reason to follow him. Okay, or maybe you will accept him because he's following the Qibla. You say, okay, yes, he's praying towards how we pray, he's going to be on our side. I will follow him because of that. All right. So there's outward. You have to think again. At the time, there must have been some outward, some reasons why some people would be following the messenger, which would be showed up clearly when the Qibla is changed. There is some issue happening at the time, right, in the community of Medina, that the change in Qibla and having one Qibla, same way as the Jews, and then another Qibla later, would show up those who are willing to follow the messenger from those who are not. Okay, so outwardly, people's motivations are mixed. There are some that seem as if they are following the messenger because he is a messenger, but in fact, they are not. They are just following due to some other motives. There's some other underlying motives, some other issues there. And what God is always doing, as we've mentioned many times, God's purpose in this world with us is to test us, to try us. We're constantly being tested in different ways. And so were the people at the time. They're being sieved out. You know, one of the verses in the Quran says, "ما كان الله ليذر المؤمنين على ما أنتم عليه حتى يميز الخبيث من الطيب." It's not, God will not let the believers or the faithful be as they are until He sifts out, sorts out the khabith from the tayyib, the good from the bad. They will all be sieved out. Okay. So then that was the first. So the first Qibla showed up a lot of issues, right? From those who are willing to follow the messenger, from those who are not. And then when the Qibla changed, that made another issue. Okay, those who followed the messenger because he was upon that first Qibla will now say, okay, why has he changed it? I'm not going to follow him anymore. And those who are not following the messenger because of the first Qibla, now he has this new Qibla, will say, okay, maybe now I'll follow him. Okay, if you're following him now because of the new Qibla, that means you weren't, that doesn't mean that you're following him because he's a messenger. You're following him again for another reason. Okay, so once the Qibla changed to Mecca, it sort of rug pulled the motives of many, the motivations of people being behind the messenger. They had those motivations pulled out from under them. Okay, and so they turned on their heels. They were left stranded with no reason to follow the messenger, or rather, reasons not to follow him. And instead, they turned away from him. Okay, so again, think of it again in that sort of way. If you're one of the Arab people of Medina, and Arabs are very tribal, you might be thinking, what's this? Muhammad now wants us to pray towards his Mecca, towards his city, right? So this man comes from Mecca, claiming to be a messenger of God to all people. And in the beginning, he's getting us to pray towards Jerusalem, where all of the past prophets have been. And now suddenly he changes that. No, we're praying towards his city, his Mecca, all right, the city of his tribe of Quraysh, where he was born. So you can start to have a bit of doubt, right? Is he a prophet or a man seeking power and tribal renown? Okay, is he trying to curry favor maybe from Quraysh, right, by getting the Muslims now to pray towards Mecca? Is he trying to sort of like sweeten up Quraysh, saying, look, I've gotten the Muslims pray towards Mecca, towards our city, maybe try to reconcile with them later? What's going on? Okay, you might be thinking, I followed him thinking he will make us a religious community similar to the Jews, but now I'm not so sure. Okay, did he change the Qibla out of anger at the Jews for not accepting him, for example? Right. So in the beginning, of course, the Jews of Medina, it became clear that they weren't going to follow him. So is that why he changed the Qibla? Right. You can have these kind of ideas. So again, it shows up why the one who was really following the messenger from the one who wasn't. Right. The ones who were really following the messenger would just follow. Okay, and that's why that verse is, إن كانت لكبيرة إلا على الذين هدى الله. It was a big thing except for those whom God guided. Others, they found it a big deal. Or maybe only now that he is praying towards Jerusalem, you will accept him. Okay, so you could have both situations, right? The reasons for. Let me change this as well. Yeah, so if you're an Israelite, maybe you accepted him before, right? So perhaps some of the Israelites would started to lean towards accepting the Prophet because he's praying towards Jerusalem, okay? But now that he turned away from their traditional Qibla, they're going to say, no, I'm not going to follow him anymore. They're upset with him. They're angered by that. And, and because of that reason, they reject him, okay? So the point of that is that there's a lot of history in the Quran and insights into the atmosphere and the thinking of the original audience, but you often have to read between the lines. You sort of have to also put yourself back in that environment and ask yourself the question, the questions which you can see in between the lines as if you were there. So in this case, the Qibla change was a big deal for some people, and you need to ask yourself why. Why was it a big deal for some people? What did God know about the motivations of the people in Medina at the time that made it such that having the first Qibla changing would be a test that would reveal who would truly follow the messenger out of faith in the messenger versus those who had other motives or doubts? Right? You have to ask yourself in this sort of way, and you start to it starts to reveal itself with just a little bit of thought. And if you have some, a little bit of the historical understanding, from the history of the time, the traditional history, you can see which pieces fit that. You can see which pieces fit that. And you can see which things were purged, right? Because in the traditional history, the narratives that we have in the seerah, we have no indication that anybody found this difficult, right? But the Quran says it was a big deal, except for those who got guided. So there were a lot of people who turned on their heels because of this. But the traditional history that we have, it doesn't reveal any of that, okay? Because again, the history that we have covers up a lot of the mistakes of the Sahaba, right? Especially the Sunni history, it covers up the mistakes of the Sahaba, the wrongs that they did. It whitewashes a lot of the history. But here we have an indication that, of course, some people must have failed this test. The Quran pretty much says this. It says, "When kanat لكبيرة إلا على الذين هدى الله." Okay, who was this an issue with? Who had this problem? Who turned on their heels because of the change of the Qibla? We don't know. None of that is recorded for us, so we have an idea about it. Okay, how many of the companions, the Sahaba, actually apostated because of this, the Qibla issue? There's very little information on that, right? We don't really have anything mentioned, but it's there. It must have happened. It must have been an issue, even if that information has been purged from our historical record. Okay, so takeaway from this. Why is this so low? Hold on. For some reason, the rest of that is not showing. Is it because it's numbered? Let me take away the numbers. Yeah, it looks like it's numbered. All right, hold on. Change it to bullet points. Okay, let's refresh and that should show up now. All right, there we go. Okay, so some takeaway notes are also about these verses of the Qibla. So one thing to note is you are expected, as I mentioned before, you're expected to follow, they were expected at least to follow the messenger even without the message or a verse from the Quran, right? So when the first Qibla was given to the messenger, it was given to the messenger, right? And from the verses we see clearly that God expected people the Sahaba, to be following the messenger in his Qibla, even though there was no verse of the Quran saying your Qibla is towards Jerusalem. Okay, that wasn't there. Okay, but nevertheless, they were expected to follow the messenger in that Qibla, right? Secondly, the Prophet obviously did not like that initial Qibla. Okay, he didn't like it. Okay, why? Right, because the Prophet, the Quran says, we see you looking towards the sky, waiting for a change in the Qibla, and now we will change you to a Qibla which you like, which you are pleased with, which means that his current Qibla he was not happy with. He was not happy with the Qibla towards Jerusalem. Okay, he did not like it, and he much preferred the Qibla towards Masjid al-Haram. Of course, the obvious reason why he would, is because he knows that that was the place built by Ibrahim. But why, so that would obviously be his preferred Qibla. But he did not like the initial Qibla. That's the point. And that means if he didn't like it, he didn't choose it, right? He didn't choose the initial Qibla, right? It was something which he was instructed to have. So even though he didn't pray, he didn't like it, he prayed towards it, which means he didn't choose it, and he must have been instructed to pray towards the initial Qibla. And of course, that's what the verse says explicitly. وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الْقِبْلَةِ we did not make the Qibla, the first Qibla, except that we should know who would follow the messenger from who would not. So God chose the initial Qibla. Okay? And the last thing about that is if he received instructions on the direction to pray, which isn't in the Quran, so he did receive instructions, the Qibla, the first Qibla, he received the instructions for the Qibla without verses from the Quran, so outside revelation from the Quran, right? He received instructions on the direction to pray. Then it seems only logical and obvious that he also received instructions on how to pray. Okay? So the idea that the Prophet sort of made up his own prayer, the 5 daily prayers, traditional prayers that we have, that the Prophet made it up himself, it doesn't seem to fit with this, this idea of the Prophet being given a Qibla, right? And he's praying towards a Qibla which he doesn't like, and he's awaiting instructions to be given a Qibla which he does like. Okay, so he didn't choose his own Qibla. It's not like I'm going to, and so in that same vein, he likely did not choose the way to pray. He didn't invent his own way to pray. It's a possibility. It's still a possibility, I would say, but it doesn't seem very likely. Okay, if he waited and to receive direction to pray, and he would continue praying in that direction which he did not like until he was given he was instructed otherwise, then it follows to suit that he awaited instructions on how to pray. Okay, and he was given instructions on how to pray. So if the Sahaba were supposed to follow the Prophet in his Qibla, then they were obviously supposed to follow him in how he prayed as well. Okay, and that's why, for example, I hold to the traditional prayer, like the traditional prayer method is, I think, the way that the Prophet prayed. It doesn't mean that it's the only way which is acceptable to pray, or that you can't pray in a different way. You can, just as you can even now have a different Qibla. Right? You can have a different Qibla, you can pray towards whichever direction you want. It doesn't really matter so much. Okay? We have this from this verse, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. And to Allah belongs the east and the west, so wherever you might turn, there is the face of Allah. Indeed, Allah is all-encompassing, knowing. Okay, that concept, I think, that also applies just as much to how you pray. Okay, so that concept applies to how you pray just as it applies to the direction of prayer. So whichever direction you pray in, there is the face of Allah. And also however you pray, however you turn to God in prayer, then there is also the face of Allah. Okay, it works both ways. Whichever direction you pray and also how you pray, you can find the face of Allah in any of those ways. And you just need to, seek the goodness. As again, this other verse, these are all interconnected verses, of course, in the same surah. وَلِكُلِّ وِجْهَةٌ هُوَ مُوَلِّيهَا. And for each, each sort of like turning or direction, just following, for each is a direction for which they can face. وَلِكُلِّ وِجْهَةٌ هُوَ مُوَلِّيهَا. And for every direction, he is the one who is turning it, basically. For every direction, Allah is the one who is giving that direction. Okay? فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. So just race towards goodness. Race towards goodness. فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. Wherever you are, أَيْنَمَا تَكُونُوا يَأْتِ بِكُمُ اللَّهُ جَمِيعًا. Wherever you are, Allah will bring you forth all together for judgment. إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. God is capable over all things. Okay, so these are all interconnected, the idea that you do have a lot of leeway in the direction you pray, because God is not confined to a direction. You have leeway in how you pray, because God is not confined to only a certain way of praying. All right, okay, so that's that first part. One other thing I want to mention in this live stream is about this whole thing about wherever you exit. Okay, so one of the mysterious parts of these verses of the Qibla, which has led some people to conclude that the word Qibla doesn't mean a direction of prayer, is the phrase from wherever you go out or exit. Okay, so for example, in this verse, وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. So from wherever you go out, turn your face towards al-Masjid al-Haram. It doesn't say so whenever you pray, whenever you stand and pray. It doesn't say فَإِذَا قَمْتَ الصَّلَاةِ. There's nothing actually mentioned about salah in any of these verses which talk about turning your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. Nothing is really mentioned about salah. Of course, the Masjid al-Haram is established for salah, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about wherever you are in the world, then turn towards Masjid al-Haram when what? In these verses it says when you exit. Okay, when you exit. وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ, from wherever you go out, or whenever you go out, then turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. Okay, and truly it is the truth from your Lord, and your Lord is not unmindful of what you do. Okay, so firstly, the key thing to note about that phrase is that it's only ever used only ever appears in an address in the first person to the Prophet himself. So it's never towards us. There's no verse saying, and whenever you go out in the plural, then face towards the Masjid al-Haram. That isn't there. Okay, and you won't see that, of course, in the English, unless it's put in the translations where you have in brackets where it's clear that it's talking to the Prophet. But that's what it says. So from wherever you go out, and here it says for prayer or Muhammad, they put that in brackets. You don't, none of that is in Arabic, of course, but the O Muhammad part is indicating to you that it is in the first person singular. The you here is not us, it's only him. Okay, وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ, from wherever you go out, then you face the Masjid al-Haram. So any understanding of the meaning of that phrase, of that go out, what does it mean when you go out? Okay, it has to take that into consideration, that it's something which is said to the Prophet only. It's never said to us. Okay, the next verse shows it even clear, even more clear. It's not the next verse, but it is the next verse. So it says again, وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ شَطْرَكَ مَسْجِدَ الْحَرَامِ. And from wherever you go out for prayer, again the you here, it's not shown again over here. It doesn't say, oh Muhammad, for prayer, oh Muhammad, but it is again, the you here is in the singular. وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ. And then it says to us, وَحَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُمْ, but wherever you are, then turn your faces towards it. Okay, so to him it said, from wherever you exit, then turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. But for us it just says, from wherever you are, then turn your face towards Masjid al-Haram. Okay. لئلا يكون للناس عليكم حجة إلا الذين ظلموا فلا تخشوهم واخشوني ولأتم نعمتي عليكم ولعلكم تهتدون. Okay, so also another thing to note here, that the main idea of turning towards Masjid al-Haram actually comes up 5 times. Okay, just like there are 5 daily prayers, it comes up 5 times, and just like the word salawat in the whole Quran comes up 5 times. Okay, so these are the sort of like the subtle indications in the Quran about the 5 daily prayers. I think they're the most accurate sort of indications that we have towards them. Okay, so to the Prophet it said, فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ, so turn your face. It's repeated 3 times in total. Sometimes 2 times with from wherever you go out, and once without it. Okay, turn your face 3 times directly to the Prophet, and to the believers in general twice. Turn your faces is repeated twice. Okay, so altogether that's how many times? 5 times, just like the 5 daily prayers. Here, just put them in the table. So again, you can see it very clearly. فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. Okay, and here you have it. وَحَيْثُمَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرًا, and wherever you are, turn your faces towards it. And the phrases where you have from wherever you go out, it's only these ones, these two, which are directed to the Prophet himself. وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ, and from wherever you go out, from wherever you depart, from wherever you or Muhammad depart, turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. From wherever you depart, turn your face towards the Masjid al-Haram. Okay, so it's only used for the Prophet. It's never used for us, for the, in the plurals. We don't have that, where it's said to us, from wherever you go out, turn towards Masjid al-Haram. Okay, so what does that mean? So I think I interpret this in a sort of like a spiritual way. Okay, that's really about exiting the lower world, the dunya, spiritually. Okay, it's something that anybody who has become sort of adept in prayer or meditation understands, and even people who get engrossed in books or movies or video games, they can also understand this. Okay, that you can become engrossed in something so fully that you sort of like leave this world, you exit this world into it, right? So you have that. You will say that to somebody who's like a bookworm or something. Come back to us. Come back to the real world, right? What do you mean come back? Did they leave? Yes, they left. They exited this world into their world of imagination, their world of the books, of the stories, of wherever it is the video game. They've exited this world to it. All right. So you can have this. You can have this sort of spiritual leaving from the real world and the dunya world, and leave it towards the spiritual world. So in that sort of way, it's sort of seen it as a sort of like from a God viewpoint. The Prophet is there in the world doing what he needs to do, and then he steps into prayer and exits the world and faces God, right? That when I'm trying to say in a weird way, I know, but having this sort of like from the vantage point of God, this is somebody who is exiting the dunya and attending towards dhikr of him, of praying towards him. Okay, they are exiting from it. Okay, and so that is what I believe the Prophet is being told, that whenever you are, or whenever you pray, from wherever he is, when he prays, and he should, whenever he leaves this dunya to go into salah, he should depart facing the Masjid al-Haram. Okay. ومن حيث خرجت فولي وجهك شطر المسجد الحرام. So from wherever you exit this dunya, wherever you are, whether you're traveling, whether you're at home, whether you're outside, inside, from wherever you exit, okay, then face towards the Masjid al-Haram. Okay, it doesn't mean that every house or building you exit, you have to pause and face Mecca. I've heard some people have this idea, right? So then now whenever they leave their house, they face Mecca for like a brief moment. For why? Okay, well, what's the purpose of that? I don't get it. But they're trying to gain, because they don't see the word Qibla as being a direction of prayer, and so it confuses them, and they think, okay, how can that be? Well, this is how I view it, right? Again, and the key to that is seeing that it's something specific to the Prophet, right? He is somebody who every time he enters the prayer, he is exiting this dunya. Whenever he enters prayer, he really is exiting the dunya. He's leaving the dunya and becoming immersed in the salah, right? And that is something to aspire to. It's something to aspire to ourselves, that whenever we exit this, whenever we pray, we are actually exiting this dunya in the first place. All right, so that's it for today. Okay, let's see. We have chats. Assalamu alaikum. Karaoke, saw you before. Is one Quranic sign to take accountability for our own selves? Not sure what that means, as in being a sign. Is one Quranic sign? I mean, is it a sign that you're following the Quran to take accountability for yourself? Well, definitely that, taking self-accountability is important. But I'm not sure what you mean by that question, to be honest. Assalamu alaikum. I don't have anybody backstage, by the way. If anybody wants to hop on, feel free. Instead of debating to win, we should encourage the people of the book to follow their religion in terms of changing charity, prayer, and etc. Yes, exactly. In terms of establishing the Torah and the Injil, right? That's what the Quran says. It says, "Ya قل يا أهل الكتاب, say O Muhammad to أهل الكتاب, لستم على شيء حتى تقيموا التوراة والإنجيل. You have nothing until you establish the Torah and the Injil and what God has revealed to you from your Lord." Right? So yes, it isn't certainly in terms of the guidance which they have in there. Right? There is guidance in the Torah and the Injil, and we should be encouraging them towards that. And of course, these are among the primary things, right? And there's a lot of overlap in the religions, right? In the Abrahamic faiths, right? In terms of how you're supposed to behave, how you're supposed to act, right? If you think to yourself of a religious Christian, a good Christian, what do you think of? Right? Somebody who's a kind person, does good to others, is charitable, is generous, forgives, right? Doesn't oppress. All of these sort of things. Think it to yourself a good Jew or somebody who's a good practicing Jewish person. What do you think of it? Same thing. Right? Do you think of a religious Jewish person or a religious Christian person or a religious Muslim person? They end up converging around the same essential idea, which is taqwa in the end, really comes down to having some amount of taqwa. Is it very difficult to enter heaven while easier to enter hell? No, actually, entering Jannah is very easy. The simplest way to enter Jannah is just not commit any of the major sins. Right? The Quran says, if you keep away from all of the major sins and immoralities, then God will forgive you all your other sins and you will enter Jannah. Right? It's very easy. Just don't commit any of the big sins. What are the big sins? They are the sins mentioned in the Quran where there is a punishment for it. Okay, the things for which God threatens hell for them. Things like murder, right? Things like murder, zina, okay, which is about anything involving a married woman. Okay, the major sins in the Quran. And all the major sins that people know about, defrauding, what's it called, orphans, right? That's a major sin in the Quran as well. So you're talking about just staying away from the major sins and immoralities, and everything else is forgiven. So it is very easy. This is making me tear up for some reason. Imagine being in the Prophet's time. Imagine the character of the Prophet and being around his presence. Yes, definitely. I mean, one of the things that you start to see when you have a better historical understanding, rather than the whitewashed, historical narrative that we have, is how the Prophet was able to, really get people together. Right? He was able to unite people upon fundamentals, basics, and easy ways. And that's why one of the things that's mentioned about him, kind of wasi' as-sadr. Say he was expansive in his breast, like he had room for everybody. Okay, he wasn't sort of like harsh, hard of hearted. He could get everybody to cooperate and get along, and lead them all upon things where which would get them all going in the right direction. Medina, you had the hypocrites, you had the Muslims, you had the Jews, and you had all of these different factions. You had there was a lot of tribalism, all of that, and yet the Prophet was able to unite that community, okay, and lead them, in a remarkable way. If an atheist commits intentional murder but converts to Islam, he will still go to hell, right? Traditional view would say his conversion was out of his past sins. No, I think any deliberate murder, whoever does that still goes to hell, yes. Because look, you have to understand, we sometimes like to philosophize the crimes too much, right? Think to yourself what it actually takes to deliberately kill somebody, Okay, well, what kind of a person you have to be for you to actually do that? Okay, it's not a small thing, right? A lot of the times we like to just think, oh, this person did the sin, and then we straight away think about the consequences of it, right? Instead of thinking a little bit about the type of person that ends up doing that as well. Okay, to kill somebody it's very difficult. I mean, try slaughtering a sheep, right? If you've done that before in your life, you see how difficult it is, even just the first time. And the first time to slaughter a sheep, no matter who you are, it's difficult. If you've never done it before, you're about to just kill something there, right? And it's a sheep or chicken. You're going to slaughter a chicken. Yeah, okay. After you've done it the first time, second time, third, it becomes normal. Okay, and that's the issue, right? Somebody knows it's everybody knows it's wrong to kill somebody, right? It's not something which is unknown whether you're a Muslim or not a Muslim, right? You don't need Islam to tell you how wrong it is to kill somebody, right? In your soul, your soul before you kill somebody is screaming out, you shouldn't be doing this, and yet you do it, all right? And somebody like that could do it again. Okay, it's like you failed this dunya, right? Remember, we're here to be tested. If you can get yourself to kill somebody deliberately, you have failed this dunya. You failed the whole purpose of being in this world. Okay, so yes, then that's it. That's why in the Quran it's a one-way ticket to hell, to kill somebody who is enjoying safety, somebody who's not, just like what they say in the West, first-degree murder. Okay. You have mentioned before that shukr means using one's intellect, body, etc., to benefit oneself, society. Does that mean not doing so? Would be a type of kufr? In a way, but not exactly, because look, not doing something isn't the opposite of it. Okay, kufr and shukr are opposites. Okay, that doesn't mean not doing one makes you the other. Okay. You could say somebody who doesn't lie is honest, okay? But that's sort of like almost part and parcel, because you're always going to be talking, you're always going to be interacting, okay? But generally speaking, a person who doesn't lie isn't automatically honest, right? A person who doesn't lie could be just somebody who's silent, who's quiet, he doesn't say anything, okay? A person who's honest is somebody who gets put in a situation where they have every opportunity and motive and reason to lie, but they won't. And that's a person who's honest, right? But somebody just doesn't lie, he doesn't have the opportunity to lie, that's different, okay? So not doing something is sort of like the baseline, right? So if you're not practicing shukr, that doesn't make you a kafir, it doesn't put you into kufr, right? But it doesn't, it's not, it's just basically like almost neutral, you're at zero, right? You're not on the other side yet, okay? Kufr is ingratitude, is to use the things which you've been given, these blessings, for what they're not supposed to be used for. Exactly the opposite. I've given simple examples, like somebody gifts you or you gift somebody a book that you really love. Let's say there's somebody is a friend who you really like, and you have this book. It's an amazing book, which you have. You feel it's a life-changing book. It's an amazing book, and you want that person to benefit, right? Because you care about them. You love them. So you give them this book and say, "Hey, look, this is an amazing book. Take it. It's life-changing. Read it." Right? And so the person takes the book and just shelves it. He doesn't use it, right? That is a form of ingratitude, right? Like he's not being grateful to the book, because he's seen this urgency from you. He's not using it. You could say that's a kind of kufr to it, right? But in reality, it's sort of like almost neutral. He's not really doing anything. He's not using the book in the wrong way, right? But if you go to his house and now you find that he's using the book to sort of like prop up a bed, right? One of the what's it called, the legs of a bed or legs of a table, or he's using it as a door stump, or even worse, he's taken like ripped out pages of it to use as kindling to like light something, or he's ripped out pages to write on the back of them for some reason, to write like, I don't know, shopping list or something like this. Now he's almost he's misusing something which was intended for something else completely, right? Or let's say he takes it and he's now using it for something even worse, like to he's using it as, I don't know, to like clean the floor with it, taking out pages and cleaning the floor with it, or hitting somebody else with it, or whatever it is. Okay, but the point is, he's not using it for how it's been intended to use, and that would be shukr, right? You would love it when you give a book to somebody which you love, and the person actually reads it. It makes you happy, and you feel that what your gift has been appreciated, right? You feel that the person's appreciated. That's shukr, right? Whereas somebody who sort of like discards it, throws it away, rips it up, tears it, doesn't look after it. Okay, that is more along the lines of a type of kufr, of not using the blessings in the opposite kind of way. And that's why kufr in that sort of way, it's to completely misuse the blessings which God has given you. Yeah, exactly. Not universally, but it's a general principle. What makes someone a kafir? So kafir, so kufr, again, so it's it's one of those, it's like saying what makes somebody in love, right? There's a lot of sides to kufr, but the essence of it, the core of it, is this kind of ingratitude towards God, right? It's a kind of response towards him. You know how they typically, Muslims will now say that kufr is to reject the truth unknowingly, right? Sorry, knowingly, to knowingly to reject the truth. And that there's some truth in that, but because that's also a form of ingratitude, right? So if you look at the truth as something which is a blessing, somebody's brought the truth to you, and it's a blessing. To know the truth is a blessing, and the truth will set you free, all the rest of that, right? And Islam, that has a real deep meaning. The truth will set you free, which means it will not make you an ibadah to anybody else but Allah, right? When you've been set free, you will not be, when you've been set free because of Islam, you will not be an ibadah to anybody else other than Allah, right? So when you've been given, the truth is shown to you, right? And you accept it, that's a form of gratitude. And rejecting it knowingly, somebody's given you the truth and you knowingly reject it, that is a huge ingratitude. So in that sort of way, that's kufr. You're a kafir in that way. But there are other ways, the kufr of you refusing to listen, to hear, to listen to any argument. That's why kufr is also, it's interlinked a lot with the jahl, right? The jahl can cause kufr, right? The jahl will not listen, will not hear. He has he's belligerent, right? These all things are kind of interlinked. What difference from the minor kufr to the major? I mean, yes, you could say that many of us do slight. We have a kufr that we do regularly, but I wouldn't put it in that sort of way, because a lot of this starts to get into discussions of where people do things out of weakness, not out of kufr, right? So again, kufr is a response to something, right? It's a response, just like shukr is a response to the blessings you've been given. Your response can be shukr or kufr, right? Inna hadaynahu sabila imma shakiran or imma kafura, right? We have given the human being all of these blessings, and we've shown him the two paths. He can either be grateful or ungrateful, right? But sometimes you do things not out of kufr, but just out of weakness, right? Out of lustful desires, or out of greed for the dunya, whatever it is. There are other reasons why people can do things, which might seem like kufr or not, right? But you're not sure. But kufr is think of it more like sort of like cold, right? It's almost a cold, calculated way of doing things. It's not something that you just. It's. I wouldn't say also, of course. Sometimes it is about your passions inflamed for a certain like sect or sectarianism or idolatry, that sort of thing can lead you into kufr, right? But that's another way to see it, right? Remember, my rule of thumb is that shirk is a ibadah to kufr in many of the ways. In many ways, shirk is a sort of ibadah towards kufr. But think of kufr also, like I said, in almost like it's a cold response. When you're doing something out of kufr, it's sometimes it's intentional, right? It's not something which you're being swept up by as much. So what makes somebody a kafir? So again, I mean, it's where is the cutoff point, right? Where is the cutoff point? I mean, we're not given like these absolute cutoff points of when this person becoming a kafir or not. But kafir is going to be somebody who is regularly. This has become sort of like part of them. Okay, they are just an ungrateful person. Like again, when does somebody become an ungrateful person? Is it when they do one thing which is ungrateful, right? Or is it how many ungrateful things do they need to do before you put the label upon them ungrateful, right? There's a certain point at which somebody in God's sight has become a kafir, okay, because of repeated kufr. The Quran we have it says laqad kafara, this person has done a kufr, and then I think that that's the broadest sense where it's just anybody can commit a kufr, even though they are from the people of faith. Okay, but then we have alladhina kafaru. In the Quran you have the phrases repeated a lot. Alladhina kafaru, alladhina amanu. Why they repeat it so much? Why not we just have more of al-kuffar or al-kafirin and the believers and mu'mineen? Why not those? So I think when you say alladhina kafaru, right, these are people who have a preponderance of kufr, right? So they have a more kufr, than somebody who just laqad kafara, somebody who has committed kufr. Okay, but he's not from alladhina kafaru yet. But then he continues to do more and more kufr, and there are some aspects of kufr which are part of him. He's taken it almost as his religion. He's not going to budge from them. He's always, he has that kufr response to it always. Then this person you could say is that one of alladhina kafaru. Okay, they have from those who have kafaru, those who did lots of kufr. And then you have al-kafirin is sort of like the description of the person now. So right, this is now somebody who it's become part of them. It's a bigger part of them. Okay, so I look at it as sort of like a Venn diagram where you have kufr on the outer rim, and inside you have alladhina kafaru, and within alladhina kafaru you have al-kafirin, right? So it becomes more and more. It sort of reminds me of the narration of the Prophet where he says, or was it? Alaykum bis-sidq. I enjoin upon you honesty, because honesty leads to birr, and birr leads to Jannah. Right? And I believe that hadith is taken from a verse of the Quran, the verse of birr. But anyway, and then he says, and a person will not cease to keep speaking the truth and seeking out truth until he is written in God's presence as one of the truthful. Right? So somebody who is honest, who's always honest, who keeps on seeking to be honest always, and he keeps on doing that, will eventually be seen in Allah's presence as an honest person. But this is a person who now has reached that sort of like, let's become part of them, become part of their nature, right? You have that saying, it's circular but true, you become what you do. The more you do of something, the more it becomes part of you, right? So in the same way that happens with kufr. The more kufr you do, the more it becomes part of you until it becomes part of your nature, right? Then you could say the person is now a kafir, right? And you must understand, again, when we talk about kafir or kafirin, we're talking about people who are among the lowest of the low. Again, recall that video which I did about whom God loves and God doesn't love, right? That those two lists are mutually exclusive. Those who are on the list of al-kafirin, somebody who's one of the kafirin, is not among any of the others. He will not be from among the muhsineen, he will not be of the sabirin, he will not have any of the other attributes of those whom God loves. Okay, so in a way you can look at it that way. You can say who is a kafir is somebody who doesn't have any of those attributes which God loves, right? And they are not part of it. Okay, a kafir is somebody who's really low. I mean, don't think of it as just like any, anybody sort of, if you know what I mean. Okay, a kafir is somebody who's really far gone, somebody who's really far gone, right? It's somebody who deserves hell. Do some of us do kufr regularly? What different from Malik? I think I mentioned that already. Yeah, I think I mentioned that already as well. And unintentionally, it's not so clear, right? You have to, again, because it could be mixed. But I don't think people can do kufr unintentionally, not very easily, right? Is starting a fight kufr? No, it depends why you're fighting, right? Starting a fight over what? Lust is a huge problem in today's society. Can speak from experience. Yes, it is a huge problem right now. How to protect your kids from that is something which I'm trying to navigate. How are the scales of deeds measured in the day of judgment? To the believers, to the kafir. I don't know what you mean by to the believers, to the kafir. But the interesting thing, I mean, we typically talk about the scales on the day of judgment as being the good weighed against the bad. That isn't exactly accurate, right? The Quran doesn't really say that. It really talks about the scales of good only. It says whoever's scales of good are heavy and whoever's scales of bad are light, which is interesting. I mean, why is it put in that sort of way? I have some different ideas about it. Maybe I'll do a stream about it. But in one way, by having it in that sort of like having as a metric of the good deeds only being weighed. Okay, but when is somebody's good deeds heavy and when are they light? Has it got to do with the person's circumstances? So, for example, somebody who's been given a lot of blessings, again, this goes back to shukr and kufr. Somebody who's been given a lot of blessings, okay, born to, I don't know, a wealthy family in a good part of the world, right? Excellent parents, brilliant education, right? Being given like excellent health, good looks, all of the blessings, okay? This person would be expected to have a lot more good deeds, right? To show the shukr for all of that. He would be expected to have a lot more good deeds. So, and then you can think of it in terms of like there's a threshold, right? Where for this person's threshold, his deeds to be considered to be good, right? To be heavy, when he whose scales of good deeds are heavy, it's going to be weighed up against the blessings he's been given. Okay, heavy compared to what? Compared to the bad deeds, maybe, right? But I think it's more likely the other, right? Because the good deeds and the bad deeds is sort of like on the day of judgment, they're sort of going to be cancelled out, right? So you have a certain amount of good deeds, certain amount of bad deeds, they cancel out, and hopefully your good deeds are more than your bad deeds, and then your good deeds are going to either be heavy or light, right? Heavy or light compared to what? Is that what's going to happen? Is it that once the balance is done, now you have a certain amount of good deeds left over, right? And that has to be either light or heavy against the blessings which you've been given. Is that how it is? Or is it just good deeds and bad deeds weighed, and whichever one is higher wins out, right? I'm not sure, because again, the verses just say whoever's good deeds are heavy or light. It doesn't say against what. Okay, what's the measurement being done against? I would expect, again, like somebody who's in a poor place, poor upbringing, abusive parents, whatever it is, somebody who has those sort of circumstances, all right, they're the less is going to be expected of them in terms of good deeds, right? So their good deeds, the same amount of good deeds that they have as the other person who has all of these blessings, for them, that those amount of good deeds might be heavy, but the same amount for the person who had all those blessings, that might be too light. Okay, so it's just something to think about. Can bad deeds be turned into good deeds? Yes, the Quran does say, when you have a tawbah, a real tawbah, أُولَٰئِكَ يُبَدِّلُ اللَّهُ سَيِّئَاتِهِمْ حَسَنَاتٍ. Those are the ones whom God will exchange their bad deeds for good deeds. So yes, that can happen when you have, when you make a proper tawbah, which is a whole, it's a process, right? And it involves also making amends. Right, when you do a tawbah, including when you convert to Islam. Converting to Islam is supposed to be tawbah anyway. It's not supposed to be just say shahada and that's it, all of your past deeds are forgiven or whatever. No, when you make a tawbah, when you make a tawbah to Islam, you have to try and amend the things which you did in the past. And when you do that and you've made amends, all of that can be, God will change it into good deeds. Yeah, exactly. They've been forgiven for things in the past. Okay, what's this? Being a bad deed doesn't have a substance and is equivalent to nothing. Yeah, I remember saying something like this similar as well, right? That, bad deeds don't have any real weight on the Day of Judgment, right? Which is another reason why I tend towards that idea that, what are they, what are they going to be? The good deeds are heavy or light against what? Okay, because on the Day of Judgment, Allah says, that God is going to make the deeds of, basically there's a lot of analogies given in the Quran how the deeds, the bad deeds on Day of Judgment will be weightless, will have no weight, no reality. Okay, if that's the case, then they don't have equal weight to weigh against an equal bad deed. So a hasana versus sayyi'ah, the sayyi'ah has no weight, but the hasana has weight. Okay, so if that's the case, they can't really be used in those kind of scales. All important question. Do you think England can win the World Cup? Well, I don't, to be honest. I mean, tonight they're going to be playing against Mexico. I'm actually going to try to watch that, even though it's going to be quite late. I don't think they're going to beat Mexico. I think they have the home turf advantage, and they just haven't been convincing. England have only been convincing in one half against Croatia, and all these other matches they haven't been very convincing. I loved Morocco's performance yesterday, even though they were pressured more than they've ever been pressured. So we'll see. I mean, I would like Morocco to win more than England. From what I've seen at this point, I mean, I would love England to win as well. But I'm rooting for England or Morocco mostly, and maybe Portugal, just because I would like to see Ronaldo get a World Cup. All right, I have somebody backstage. Assalamu alaikum. Silver Fox, how are you?
Alaikum salam. How are you, bro?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Alhamdulillah. Not bad. It's been very hot lately in the UK, especially in London.
I've heard. Yes.
Yeah, absolute horror show. I can't lie. But yeah, it was all right this last week, but it's starting to pick up again. The heat. But
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's absolute horror show.
Really?
Yeah.
Usually, I mean, the summer. I remember that sometimes in the UK we'd get no summer, so at least this time you feel like there's a summer.
Yeah, but this heat, man, I'm telling you,
it's too much.
It's not normal. It feels like radiation. Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the thing is, I live in an apartment building, and a lot of the energy and heat is retained in the building.
Yeah, they're
So
made to
when
be
it
that way, right? Because of
exactly. So when it gets hot, it gets really hot. It feels like a furnace.
it can't handle it. Yeah, not built to handle the heat.
Yeah, for real. But how's it like in where you are in Saudi?
It's fine. It's fine. Right now, it's of course it's just hot, but just it's the normal heat, right?
Oh,
It's not a big thing. It's a normal heat.
It's all right. Yeah. I actually had a few questions. I was like a few years ago, I actually looked into Tashayyu, Shia Islam, because after what you commented in one Reddit post, and at the time I was like sort of confused about my beliefs, mainly about like Sahaba and etc. Then I learnt about after your comment, I looked into Ghadir and the incident of the pen, and the usurping of Ali alayhi salam, and his Khilafah, all that stuff, and then I got more deeper into it, and I made some Shia friends, which was a first for me because I was like very anti-Shia at the time, as is a lot of Salafis, and that with that kind of mindset, I was very against them, and so when I made those friends, I learned a lot, and I came to sort of understand their history and became more, I guess, empathetic towards them.
Yeah.
I stopped becoming anti-Shia and started to become more open-minded, which I think as Muslims we should be, and not hold anyone else against their beliefs. So I wanted to know about like your opinion on history when it comes to history, especially like the Shia history and the Imams. What are your opinions on them? I remember watching a video from Mufti Abu Layth, and he was saying about when it comes to the Imams, how the Shia view them are correct. I think that's what he put quote for quote, verbatim. Like I'm not sure what he said exactly, but he said something like that. I wanted to know your opinion on the Shia Imams and the Shia history, and your opinion on it.
I mean, I've never heard that from Mufti Abu Layth. We said that the opinion of the Shia on the Shia Imams is right.
Something like verbatim, he said something like this. He said basically how the Shias, what they say about the Imams is correct or mostly correct, something like that. It was a clip that I saw on someone clipped it on Twitter. There was a clip on that.
I mean, if he's probably, I would guess he probably means about the history more than anything else, right? Rather than like the theology that they have about the Shia Imams. But my opinion about it is that I think the sort of like the Shiism that developed later, that has a bit of an influence from the thought of al-Mukhtar and the revolution of al-Mukhtar, right? So after the killing of Hussein, you had the Tawabin, the people who went out, like they formed the army. They said we're a repentant army, and they went around trying to kill the killers of Hussein. And so you had this sort of like movement of al-Mukhtar, and I think that that Shiism is a little bit influenced by that. I also think that they are also influenced by even a great person I think to listen to in terms of he's sort of like a Hassan Farhan al-Maliki within the Shia on the Shia side. Is Kamal al-Haydari.
Kamal al-Haydari.
Yeah. He says that, I mean, a lot of the same. He says a lot of our Shia, a lot of our history, Turath, is also influenced by the Umayyads. We just don't know it. We're also influenced, just as the Sunnis are, by some of these sayings, right? Of course, he recognizes that. He wouldn't go far as like what I'm saying. I would say that I think, the whole thing about the 12 Imams and all of that, I think that comes from the Umayyads as well. Right? The Umayyads pushed forward this idea that there will be 12 imams, 12 caliphs, and they meant that for themselves, right? They meant that for themselves. Eventually, the Shia took that on board, and they said that that this is about the imams from Ahl al-Bayt, right? Because even those narrations, they all say Quraysh. There'll be 12 imams, or 12
Quraysh,
khalifas.
that's correct.
Quraysh, they're all from Quraysh. The caliphs, the Umayyad caliphs are Quraysh. Umayyads are caliphs, are Qurayshis. And I found that to be a huge blind spot among Shias when I speak to them, like the layman Shia. They will quote this hadith that the Prophet said there'll be 12 imams from Quraysh. I'm like, my friend, you know that Abu Bakr is from Quraysh, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't help you. But they don't see that. It's sort of like, what do you mean? No, it means Ahl al-Bayt. Who says it means Ahl al-Bayt? Quraysh. You're saying this is narration you're telling me. Quraysh is the tribe of Quraysh. Okay? Abu Bakr is from Quraysh. Umar is from Quraysh. Muawiyah is from Quraysh. Yazid is from Quraysh. Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan is from Quraysh, etc. So those narrations, when it says there will be 12, and it's also the narrations themselves, how did they come about? They come about, the Prophet was saying something, right? And then some people made a ruckus so that others couldn't hear. And then the narrator asks somebody else, hey, what did he hear? What did he say? I didn't hear what he said. And he tells them, he said that all of them will be from Quraysh, right? So the person didn't even hear the Prophet say it. It's somebody else now say, oh, you didn't hear? Okay. And now he tries to pull a sly one. He says that, that they all were from Quraysh. So I think that hadith, that narration about the 12 imams and stuff, I think it was done, was pushed around the 12th caliph, right, from the Umayyads. And so if you count all the caliphs, starting from Abu Bakr, all the way up to the 12th being, I forget who it was again when I counted the number. Was it Sulaiman? Right, I think it was one of them anyway. Sulaiman ibn Abd al-Malik. So I think it was basically pushed around that time, right? They pushed out these narrations saying, everything will be fine. The Prophet said everything will be fine, up to 12 caliphs, right? And I'm basically saying now this is the 12 caliphs, everything is fine, nobody should be worrying, right? So I'm the idea about it. But in terms of like just the general Shia view, I 100% believe that the Prophet did nominate Ali to be the caliph, right? And the reason why that didn't go through has a lot of issues, in terms of the politics of the time. I don't think at the start, I think Umar at the start was happy with it. He didn't mind, right?
Because he was congratulating.
He's congratulating all of this, all of that. But then what happened afterwards? I mean, there's you've heard of the narration about the tree, basically, where the Prophet said, why is it that the tree which is closest to the Messenger of Allah is more hateful to you than the tree which is furthest? That happened after. You've heard of that narration, yes?
I'm not sure.
So basically, after Ghadir Khum, when it happened, right? There's also narrations about this. After the whole announcement of Ghadir Khum, people started to leave the caravan without the Prophet's permission. They started to just leave, quickly go. And very soon you had a lot of people who had it became clear to the Prophet that there were people who were dissatisfied with that announcement of Ghadir Khum. And so he made that comment. That's when he made that statement. He said, why is it that the side of the tree which is closest to the Messenger of Allah is more hateful to you than the side which is more hateful to you than the side which is furthest? Basically saying, why is it that the branch of Quraysh, which is closest to the Messenger of Allah, right, meaning the Banu Hashim, Adi, why is that side more hateful to people than the other sides, right? I mean, the rest of Quraysh.
Because Banu Hashim was always a pariah. They were always seen as different to the other tribes, right?
And they have not really. I mean, Banu Hashim, in Hashim's time, in Abdul Muttalib's time, they were seen as the most honorable tribe. They were still seen as the most honorable tribe in the Prophet's time, but only they were waning, basically. The influence was sort of waning, and there was a competition between them, and it's a competition between the Banu Abd al-Shams and Banu Abd al-Manaf, and that sort of coalesced even further in this sort of competition between Banu Hashim and Banu Umayyah, right? So it became that. So Banu Umayyah eventually became on up, right? They became like sort of more powerful and stuff like that. And Banu Hashim had fallen on, on harder times, so to speak. In any case, so when that's when the Prophet said that, and and Abu Bakr made the same, made a comment then as well. He said, "Truly, O Messenger of Allah, whoever seeks permission after this is, I forget what the narration exactly says. It's in a bad state or something like this. But even so, Abu Bakr also recognized this. But okay, so why did it end up happening that they allowed sort of like the caliphate to go to other? Well, exactly because of that. They did not want. My reading of it is that Abu Bakr and Umar and others, they saw, and even Ansar, they saw clearly that Quraysh, Ben Umayyah, Abu Sufyan was in Medina now. The Tulaqa had come to Medina, even though the Prophet had told them not to. That there was this undercurrent of people of Quraysh not wanting to allow Ali to become the caliph, right? They did not want another Hashemite. That the Prophet, they accepted a Hashemite prophet. They were not willing to accept a Hashemite caliph after him, right? And so they saw that there would be more conflict with Quraysh, and it would have been. It's very obvious when you look at how Quraysh reacted after the Prophet passed away. Quraysh in Mecca, how they reacted, they almost apostated like the other tribes, right?
Yeah.
There was only the speech of Suhail which sort of like kept them, okay? But they almost apostated, and if Ali had been selected as the caliph, they would have certainly apostated. They would have said no, and then you'd have the whole conflict again, just like he had a war between Medina and the tribes which had apostated and declared new prophets. They would have returned to another fighting between Quraysh in the Quraysh in Medina and the Quraysh in Mecca. It would have been a reopening of the conflict, and Abu Bakr and Umar did not want that. They were like, "Oh no, we don't. We just got our family, our tribe back together, basically, right? There's still this tribal issue, right? We just had our tribe back together, and now if Ali becomes the caliph, it's going to rip Quraysh down the center again, and again we're going to be at war with each other, and we don't want that. And so why should Ali be the caliph? Anybody else can be the caliph. Why does it have to be him, right? So that's the reasoning behind that, right?
But doesn't that make Abu Bakr, Umar, and even Uthman like usurpers and disobeying the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam?
100% makes him disobeying the Prophet. I don't think it makes it usurpers because Ali hadn't been accepted yet, right? So when you could say a usurper, I suppose it just becomes like terminology now, just using different words and stuff. But in the end, Ali hadn't actually become the caliph yet, right? So it wasn't like he wasn't deposed.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. But like my understanding, or at least my reading of it, was there was hostility between the two parties, between Banu Hashim or Ali's family and with the Quraysh. Like when I don't know if you know, but the incident of the burning of the house of Fatima.
Yeah, but that happened after. That happened because Ali didn't give bay'ah, right? So I'm talking about just up to the point of why was it even when the Prophet was dying, it was pretty clear already to others that they were not going to be happy with Ali, right? That they didn't want Ali. When Ansar gathered together, they only gathered because they knew that Ali is not going to become the caliph. Right? So they wanted to have a united front. They wanted to sort of elect a united leader for themselves. They weren't trying to elect a caliph for everybody, right? And in many ways, it was the whole issue is because the Ansar buckled. They were the first to buckle, right? That was the real issue, I suppose, was there, right? They're the ones who allowed it to become what it did. And again, the reason why is because of the tribalism, because they were ready, both the Aus and the Khazraj, they were ready to give have a unified leadership under Sa'd, right?
Yeah.
They were happy to do that. But when the Muhajirun came and it started to create that rift. And then who were the first to give bay'ah to Abu Bakr and Umar from the Ansar? It was Aus, because they said among themselves, you know what, if we let Khazraj take the leadership, right, then they will never give it up to us. So then you had that tribalism raise up again. And so that's why the Aus were the first to give bay'ah. And Aus were the traditional, like the historical pre-Islam. They had more links with Quraysh, with the Umayyads and with Quraysh, whereas Khazraj were more linked with Banu Hashim, right?
Okay.
So again, there was a bit of tribalism there as well, right? That tribalism, that conflict, that old inter-conflict between Aus and Khazraj, that's one of the reasons which led them to break. And Sa'ad mentioned this, right? So this is the first weakening was when one of the Aus said, "From us I should be a leader, and from you a leader." He said, "No, don't. Why are you weakening your stance?" Right? No.
So can I ask then, if the case, because Ali was rightfully chosen to be Khalif, but he was taken by Abu Bakr and Umar, does that make them sinful? Like anyone who became Khalif after that, does it make them sinful?
Well, I mean,
because they disobeyed the Prophet?
Definitely in the beginning, yes. But then after that, khalas, when things have moved on, sort of like compound the sin over and over again, right? He became khalas, and nobody else. Ali went around trying to get support. Nobody supported him, so they're sinful as well in that sense, right? He wanted to get enough people who would support him. Nobody would. The horsemen of Banu Sulaym came into Medina and sort of like scared everybody from doing anything. Then you had the incident of the house of Fatima. You had all of these things happening, right? And eventually people made their choices, right? One of the things you will see about the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt later, from Hassan, Ali, all of them, is they did not stand up for something, like to take leadership, and until they were asked to or invited to. So the Prophet didn't go to Medina until he had been given assurances from the leaders of Medina in Mecca that they would support him, right? And so that's when he went. Okay. Ali, the same thing. He looked for support when he saw that people did not want to support him. Khalas, their choice. He left them to their choice. Okay. Then later, when Uthman was killed and they wanted to give bay'ah to him, right? They came to him and he accepted it, right? So there has to be acceptance from the people and enough support, right? And the same thing when it comes to Hussein. Hussein only went to Kufa when it became sort of like he saw as his duty. They kept on asking him, "Come, please." And then he sent somebody over there to make sure that there was enough support, that there was enough strength, that it was something viable, right? And they were saying, they were because there was a lot of zulm. People don't understand. There were a lot of issues that had happened up to this point, by Muawiyah and Yazid. Medina was being completely destroyed, overrun, so much corruption, injustice everywhere. And so, they were saying to Hussein, look, you're the only one who can actually make a change. You're the only one who people will follow. It's your duty. Don't you see what's happening? He only went when he saw that it was upon him that if he didn't go, it would be sinful, right? But then he had to make sure that they had enough support, that there was support that was there. So he sent and made sure about it, and he said, he had the assurance that there were like 70,000 people would be with him. In the end, of course, what happened, and it didn't work out. But then again, later on, when Hassan, not later on, but even before that, Hassan himself, right? When after Ali died, before he was dying, they asked him, "Should we give bay'ah to Hassan?" He said, "It's up to you, right? You choose." So they gave their bay'ah to Hassan, but then Hassan, so he had the bay'ah, the willingness, but he didn't have the support. He was his base was divided, right?
Is that why he gave up the Khilafah?
He's not required to do a suicide mission, right? They wanted him, but they weren't supporting him enough. They were divided, right? the general people with him, but the leaders of Kufa were the tribal leaders were with the money, right? And they were with Muawiyah. They were bought out. Half of them at least, right? And so what happened? He got stabbed, right? They stabbed him. His own army. No, Hassan. His own army stabbed him, right? His own army. There was like this ruckus, and the army is divided because, of course, one of the things that happened is the Khawarij were from Kufa, right? And Ali had to fight against them, and so you ended up having like the split in families, tribes, right? Yeah, you had to be with people who are, in your own camp, or people who led to the deaths of some relatives who had become of the Khawarij. So it was a mess, right? But the point is that none of them, the sort of like manhaj of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, and those that talking about the main Ahlul Bayt, when I was talking about those, the Itra, right, is that they would not go out without being asked to, and without having enough support, being shown that they have enough support. Otherwise, then khalas, then you've made people have made their choice, right? It's only by saying we are with you and then not supporting. You have to have both.
I wanted to ask, with me, obviously, like I believe in the Qur'an, and I take it as my main point of view for everything. But also there's this hadith on the other side, but obviously there's biases. There's obviously the Sunni hadith and the Shia hadith, and it's very hard to differentiate the biases and which is true and which has the biases. What do you, when you look at hadith, I know like you take a Quran first approach or Quran centric approach, like what should my philosophy be like? How should I see this? Because at this point, like I'm a bit confused with into just hadith. Like Quran I know like is there, but when it comes to tarikh, like history, how should I view it? Because who's the bad guy, who's the good guy? And the Shia say like, what happened in with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam time is parallel to what happened to Musa and his brother, because I don't know if you know, in that history, when Harun took the Khilafah, he went to war against one of Musa's wife, and the same thing happened with Ali and Aisha, and it's just like, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy, who should I take from, who should I avoid?
I never heard of that. Didn't Harun pass away before Musa? In the Jewish thing?
Apparently there was a war between Harun and one of,
I don't know. Are you? Is this you taking this from like the?
Yeah, there was a Shia. One of the Shia friends I was talking with, they said, I didn't verify it, but
yeah, they have some mythology in that sort of way, right? So after Musa passes away, the person who leads the Israelites is Joshua.
Yeah,
Joshua. It's not Harun.
Oh,
right?
Okay. Yes. Right. Yes, Joshua, I think it was Joshua. Right? Yes.
Yeah. So it's not Harun at all, right? But of course, the Shia would love for it to be Harun, because then you have the hadith of of Manzila, that you are from me like Harun is from Musa, and then you have the whole So then they're trying to sort of like chip the whole thing. No. So be careful of that when they because like I said, that's one of the things you can see clear biases in, right? There is some like similarities in the whole between Harun and Musa, and the whole what happened after Musa passed away, and these sort of things, but it's sort of like incidental, and I wouldn't put too much on that. How much of that is even true, right? We don't have we have the Israelite traditions and the Jewish and the Bible, but how much of that is accurate? We can't say. So I would say always start with what you work your way from the most known things, the certainties, and use those to slowly sieve out the less certain things, right? So you always start with the things which you know first or are sure about, and then you can use those to slowly build upon them, right? The things which if these things you're certain about, right, then from these certain things, this other thing which is narrated in history, seems to be true, and now you've got something else to add, right?
Is that how you
And
did?
yeah, and then you keep on adding things in that sort of way. Okay, I mean, like for example, today we just I mentioned about the change of the Qibla and how that was a big issue for the Sahaba and how some of them turned away and apostated. Yeah, we don't find that in our history, right? We don't have any indication that any of the Sahaba found it difficult, found the change in the Qibla difficult, right? Some mentioned at all. We don't know of any Sahaba who apostated because of the change of the Qibla, yet the Quran mentions that happened. Okay, so that tells you now something, that that there's covering up with respect to the history, that these things happened, that you had Sahaba who were very influenced by the Jews and the Christians, by the Jews specifically, right? And the Quran mentions that in other verses, it says, "You love them and they don't love you," right? It talks about the Sahaba as loving the Israelites, while the Israelites don't love them back. But we don't have that in our tradition either. So now you have something else. So you have, and that tells you later how it could be possible that we have so much Israelite traditions entering into hadiths, because these Sahaba loved the Jews, right? The Israelites, right? And so you start to build up a picture, right? It doesn't have to have names on it yet, and I would say avoid that in the start if you want to sort of like build up a picture of what was happening, because the Quran doesn't mention names. Okay, but you can understand that there are different factions happening, right? There are groups among the Sahaba who love the Jews, right? Who are close to them, right? Who have links with them. You can see that there are some of the hypocrites who are people who are merchants, because the Quran mentions them in that sort of way, right? So you start to build up these sort of like descriptions of the people of the time. And then if you are actually studying the narrations and the history in those, you can sort of start to identify different people with those. All right, and it will be tentative. It won't be like 100% certain, but you can start to see, okay, this makes sense. It makes sense that this person fits with this description. Okay, so you start to build up this picture, right? By having the most important is understanding the mentalities of the people around. Okay, not sort of like not straight away deciding who are the bad guys, who are the good guys. Understand what the bad guys were like and what the good guys were like first. Does that make sense? So trying to get a sense of where they were mentally, what their thought processes were, what these different groups were thinking, what they wanted, what they didn't want, right? And then you can start to sort of like identify some of those in the actual history.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last question from me. I'm going to a different topic now, but it's about reincarnation and how there's like I've seen documentaries and I've even seen some of your takes on it about child reincarnation, and I've also looked at other Reddit posts and seen evidences of that as well. How does the Quran support this idea of reincarnation at all?
I think it does, not directly, right? But indirectly, I think it does, right? Indirectly, for example, when those who are condemned to hell say, "Oh our Lord, let us go back. We will do good deeds other than what we used to do," right? And then it says no. The response is no. Inha kalimatun huwa qa'il. It's just something which they are saying, right? Meaning what? If they and then it says if they were returned back, they would go back to what they used to do, right? Why? Because these are people who have basically they've been through enough of this world to show who they are, right? To show who they are, right? And there's no point in taking them back, right? Just like Allah talks about those who are in who are in hell, that again, those who are in hell, that if they are taken back to the dunya, they would do exactly what they used to do, right? Because you have to understand that the test of this world, where somebody's being allocated to hell, it's not a test which it's a test which if the person repeats it again and again, then you will always have the same outcome, right? If you imagine yourself a perfect test, like a math test or something, right? If it's a perfect test, it will always the person who takes it, no matter how many times they take it, they will always get the same result. Even if well, let's not say the same test, but a different test. Somebody who is an excellent person, the person who knows how to test a student properly to get their exact level, they could make 100 different tests, and each time the test, the student will get the same score because you're testing the same person's knowledge, right? Mathematical knowledge, right? It's not the one test he will pass and another test he will fail. You see what I mean? Because the person is making an accurate test which shows exactly what the person is. Okay, in the same way that this world is testing people exactly how they are. Even if they were to go back, they would end up in hell. If they were to go back and repeat their life 1,000 times, they would still end up in hell. Okay, no matter where they were born, where they were because that is what they are, right?
I was sort of looking at different religions on reincarnation, especially like ancient religions like Hinduism and in Greek mythology as well. There's like stories on like I think one of the Greek mythology about what's in it? I think it was Achilles or one of these famous characters where they died and they went into the afterlife and they saw like how this reincarnation or the afterlife process works, and they were saying how those who get reincarnated they drink from this river of forgetfulness, so when they go back they don't remember things, and even in and those who are like those are the good ones, but the ones who are bad, they get reincarnated into certain animals. Like for example, if they tend to eat a lot in their life, they come back as pigs, or if they were like doing evil, they will come back as monkeys, etc. Or people who are beastly, they'll come back as lions or whatever. And it's the same thing in Hinduism as well. Like you're good, you get reincarnated into
higher form or something.
Yeah, higher form, exactly. But if you're bad, you get reincarnated as certain
lower
animals.
Form,
exactly.
Until you reach the height and escape.
exactly. And Nirvana and all this stuff, Buddhism with Nirvana. So, and I was just trying to find that connection in the Quran, and there was this verse that stood out to me where Allah talks about I think it was Bani Israel, when he says that he turns them into pigs and animals, pigs and monkeys. Is that like, I don't know if there's, maybe I'm just going way out of my depth here, but is that related? Like, was there some sort of connection there with reincarnation, like those who did bad and they come back as monkeys and pigs?
I don't think there was. That was, I mean, I did a live stream on that. It was about it's basically about the Jews who had exaggerated in the Sabbath and had done numerous wrong actions again and again and again, right? So eventually God said to them, okay, be kunu qiradatan khasi'in, be monkeys, right? But then of course the next verse shows that they are still actually people, right? That these are still people, they're still human beings, right? So when it's just saying like, you want to be a dog, be a dog. Right? You want to be a monkey, be a monkey. It's sort of like that, right? Because that's what they were doing. They kept on just basically thoughtlessly imitating their traditions, right? And that's in Arabic, this sort of thing, you need to sort of understand a little bit of the idioms, right? In Arabic, like when we say in English, say somebody's being like a parrot. It means he's copying what somebody else is saying. In Arabic culture, the monkey is seen as something which just copies, because this is the thing. A monkey copies your actions. You do something in front of the monkey, he copies it without thinking, without understanding. And so that's the idea that God is saying, that these Jews, they became like monkeys who just copy traditions without understanding. Right? They just copied the tradition of the Sabbath and this, and then find somebody creates a loophole and others copy it. like how they do now. They do these absolutely weird things to try to get out of the Sabbath and trying to trick God. You've seen those things, right? Where they like do these, and they all just copy it, right? And a generation of the new way of fooling God in the Sabbath.
Trying to find loopholes. Trying to
There's this one thing where when you're not allowed to use a machine or something in your house. And so, but you know, they want to be able to drive around or something. So what they do is they have a rope which goes around the community, and that rope now defines the whole community as their house, and now they can drive around.
I saw that. I think it was in New York or something, right? That's so funny. There's a whole video on.
Yeah, that's like a monkey, right? That's a monkey.
Yeah.
That's being a monkey.
Okay. Yeah. Okay,
just call, and then they will proliferate. Somebody decide, I've got this new way of doing it, and then others copy it. Okay, monkeys copying other monkeys without any understanding of what you're actually being told here to do. Right, the Sabbath is meant to make them. You know, it's supposed to be a day where they turn to the remembrance of God. That's the whole point, right? It's supposed to be a day away from the dunya and working in it, and you just find these. You think it's just about these little rules and stuff. Anyway, so that's what that is about. But going back to the reincarnation thing, so I think there is some indications of that because all of the verses which talk about how somebody is not allowed to go back, right, or all the people are condemned to hell. Yeah. And if these are people who are saying, "Can we go back?" There's an indication that means that's a possibility, right? Maybe they are asking that because they see that others are being allowed to go back. Right, that they see that is a possibility to go back, but God is telling them, you can't go back because you've lived your life, and if you go back, you will do what you used to do. There's no difference, right? But it's other people who have not, fulfilled, they haven't lived a full life. They need to. They should be allowed to go back. I mean, again, I go back to the verse a lot of the times. That God created life and death in order to test us, which of us is best in character or ability, right? Just look at all of the slaughter that happened in Gaza. You had all of these people who are born. All of those souls now, what happens to them? They don't get a shot of life, right? All of those, how many not even 1-year-old babies were killed in Gaza in this genocide, right?
That's true.
All of these people, these were souls who came to the Sabbath. They're supposed to have a full life and be tested in this world to see if they go to heaven or hell to be tested, right? Okay, they just got killed. Well, what's going to happen to them? Khalas, that's it. Sorry, you unlucky you were born at this genocide time. Now, khalas, you don't have a shot in this world. No, why not? What is the reason for not sending them back?
Because there's certain people, Muslims, that say there's a hadith about them being in Jannah and they will be living there eternally as in that form, like as servants or something. I don't know if you're aware of that hadith.
Yeah, but again, first of all, I think it's a weak hadith, right?
Yeah.
But it just doesn't seem like it's not in line of the Qur'an at all, right? There's
what about those who say?
So if no child is killed, which should have been the case, right? In all of human history, no child should have been killed. So that means there's going to be none of those like servant boys in hell in Jannah.
It doesn't make sense. But what about those who say those who they bring up the verse that those who die in the way of Allah, they say that they're not dead, but they are with their Lord.
Yeah.
So
I mean, somebody who's died in Sabilillah, right? That's somebody who's definitely passed. Why would they need to come back?
But what if they're like young, like for example, they're a child or a teenager, like those?
That's not fi Sabilillah, right? Somebody who's like a child or something, they're not dying in Sabilillah, right? They're a child, right? But somebody else, even if it's a teenager, if it's 17, 18, whatever, right? And somebody who's done a heroic thing, right? That somebody who's definitely passed this world's test, right? Somebody even lived a short life, but did amazing in it. And I also think, again, going back to the idea of that this world's test will really put you in your place. Like even somebody who's lived up to like 60, 70 years old, I don't think this is probably very rare that would happen that somebody lives to that age where it's not clear whether they'll be in Jannah or not, right? Somebody who's reached that advanced. But let's say it happens that somebody has reached that stage and still they have not sort of like shown themselves, right? They have not, the test has sort of worked on them. They could also be brought back if they pass away. Because, but most people are given it long enough life. I mean, another one of the verses which I think supports the idea of reincarnation is the verse which says, again to the people of hell, did we not give you life long enough so that those who would remember would be reminded? So whoever would take, admonition, whoever would take dhikr would take it, right? So it means that everybody who ends up in hell is somebody who has lived a long enough life. Okay, so everybody who ends up there has been given a long enough life to be guided.
There's those who experience like near-death experiences, and they say when they died they see a light, or they see Jesus, they see they see something, and they come back like, what do you think that is that they're seeing? They see, sometimes I see like Christians, they say, oh, they see Jesus, and then
I think that's basically the person's spirit or soul coming back to their body and then that experience gets colored through their own biases and what their own religious ideas or whatever it is, right? So it can be covered like that, right? So it's like it's like you've been out, you're seeing a clear light, right? And then you go back into your body, and your body has let's say blue tinted lenses, right? Or blue tinted mind, and now you're seeing that, you're remembering that through that blue tint, and now that light looks blue, right? So that light which was God, now it looks like Jesus. Okay, because that's what's in your mind, right? That's what's in your mind. So you're sort of seeing it through your own mind's sort of like thing. It just gets sort of like adapted to that, right? So whatever the experience that they had outside of their body has to be reinterpreted within their body, right? Once they're back in. But outside, when they were actually in that near-death experience itself, outside of the body, no, they didn't see Jesus. Well, maybe they did, actual Jesus, but it wouldn't be like that Jesus is God or Trinity. It wouldn't be that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, this has been fantastic, bro Khalid. I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me. And are you gonna do one next week as well? Or?
I'm not sure. It depends on I would like to. So the plan is to do one next week. I'm going to do one last week as well. I'm going to try to do this weekly again. But just last week I was a bit ill, had a bit of a headache, so I couldn't get around to it. And got busy.
I kind of stumbled this on a mistake. I just saw you live. I was like, oh, let me just jump on.
All right. Okay. Yeah. I need to set them up earlier, but I've just been so busy these times. But I'm going to try to set them up a bit earlier. I mean, today I did actually set it up. I think, sort of in the morning, so around 11 o'clock my time. I did set it up like around 11:15 a.m. my time. So it's a bit. I got like almost a day in before. But
nice.
Hopefully next time I'll do it maybe a couple of days before. Maybe I'll try to set them up on Saturday to do them on Sunday, or on Friday to do them on Saturday. At least a bit more time.
Yeah, today was, I think it was decent. It wasn't too bad. But I just didn't know you online. I didn't get any notification or anything. I just stumbled on by mistake. Alhamdulillah for that, because I had some questions and I wanted to ask you. But it's been an honor speaking to you as always, and
no problem.
I wish you the best, brother.
You too. Allah. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
All right. Okay. Let's wrap up. I just want to see some chat. Abdul Nasir, how are you? Assalamu alaikum. Why didn't Ali become the caliph instead of Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman? Even if Ali had become the first caliph, does that mean Ali's children and his line would ever be the forever caliphs? Well, I don't think they would have to be the forever caliphs, but this is actually one of the issues that people will bring up. For some reason, it's always an issue that the Prophet's family should have leadership one after the other. That's the issue, right? But that Banu Umayyah having leadership one after the other, which is what they did, right? That is sort of like it's never seen as such a thing to be worried about as much, right? People are worried about the Banu Umayyah and others and Banu Abbas and these dynasties. It's not seen as like a huge issue that they had that, but they had that as well, right? And the other thing is don't forget that sort of the lineage of prophet is a Qur'anic thing, right? Allah Himself put prophethood in families, in lineages. Okay, it's not a huge thing, but no, I think that it happened. Ali did become the caliph, and he did not make his son the caliph after him, right? So I don't think they would have been one after the other. If Ali had become the first caliph, should Hassan have become the caliph after him? I definitely think so, right? And Hussein, because it comes down to just those four. I consider just those four, because again, I accept the narration about the itra, right? That the Prophet received prophecy, that he was told that his itra would not deviate from the Quran. That's the point, really. I put this into my second response video with about the reaction video with about the Sunnah being more powerful than the Quran. Dr. Jonathan Brown. I talked a little bit about that today. The whole point of Ali or the Ahlul Bayt being nominated by the Prophet to be the caliphs after him was because the Prophet was told that they would not deviate from the Quran. It all goes back to Quran central, being Quran centric, right? That the Prophet was told, given assurances that Ali and his Ahlul Bayt, his itra, would not deviate, would not separate from the Quran until they die, right? And so that's why. But he wasn't given any assurance about, the later descendants. If the Prophet had nominated Ali for the caliph, it would have become compulsory on Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman to obey the Prophet. It's possible for Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman to disobey the Prophet. Well, it's not impossible. They did disobey the Prophet in other situations. But that's one of the sticking points, right, in Sunni Islam, that we have been given this idea, this image of Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, that they would never ever disobey the Prophet, right? And that just isn't the case, right? It doesn't have to be always in a malicious sort of way, right? It could be just because they said, okay, you can make an argument, right? Okay, yes, the Prophet nominated Ali to become the caliph, but it doesn't have to be him. Why can't anybody else? We have the Quran. We're just as good men as Ali. We can understand things just as well as he can. And if we don't make him the caliph, we would save ourselves the issue of having to reopen a war with Quraysh. So you can have reasons for it. Why didn't Ali kill the murderers of Uthman? That was the biggest mistake of Ali. Islam is all about justice. Well, first of all, he isn't. It was a fitna. He didn't know who the murderers of Uthman were, and instead of asking why did Ali not kill the murderers of Uthman, why didn't Uthman step down from the caliphate when the whole ummah wanted him to step down? The whole ummah was telling him, no, get that, leave it, step down from the caliphate. Uthman wanted to have some of those who had he allowed Marwan to play games with him, and every time they made a deal with Uthman, he renegated on it. He would not change when he did the change. Why? So Why didn't Uthman step down, right? But in the end, of course, Ali was there protecting Uthman. He had Hassan and Hussein trying to protect Uthman from being killed, right? And eventually, even forget about Uthman, Ali. Why didn't Muawiyah kill the killers of Uthman, right? When he finally got to power, he told the children of Uthman, "Don't you ever mention Uthman again. Don't mention your vengeance for Uthman. Don't ask me to kill the killers of Uthman." And many of the people who were accused of being of the killers of Uthman were part of Muawiyah's entourage. So it was just a game. The whole thing about the killers of Uthman, the killers of Uthman. Don't let that fool you. It was just a political tool, right? That Uthman used. The killers of Uthman, the Muawiyah used. He used that until he got the caliphate, and then he brushed it aside, right? Don't let Muawiyah fool you and keep you on this point. Even after 1,400 years, he still has that control over us with his talking point. The killers of Uthman. Ali should have given up the killer of Uthman, and everything would have been okay. No. Even if Ali had given up knew who the killers of Uthman was, right? He would have done something about it. But let's say that happened and he did. You think Muawiyah would have backed down? He wouldn't have backed down. It had nothing to do with that. If a soul has to race towards good deeds, why does some souls who are born but die right after birth or during their youth? Well, when people die has got to do with a lot of reasons. Maybe a disease, maybe bad choices of the parents, genocide like in Gaza, people being killed. All of these things, right, are not God deciding when people die, right? I don't believe in this kind of thing that if somebody's killed by a murderer or by a disease or anything like that God preordained that is predestined. There's no qadr in that sort of way. Right after birth or during their youth. I understand that killing someone isn't predetermination, but it seems that way. I don't understand why it would seem that way. You're saying you understand it isn't predetermined, but it seems that way. How can you understand? How can it seem that way if you understand that it isn't? I don't get that, right? But for the other questions about a child dying in youth because of because the mother had made some bad choices while she was pregnant, or because they went to visit a country and there was a disease there and they didn't get take health precautions, right? They went to somewhere where there's malaria and the child got malaria, or yellow fever, the child got yellow fever, or somebody had a rabid dog and they let them loose on a child and it bit them. All of these things, right? None of these are qadr or predestined, and people can die from them. Young people too. It is understood to be predetermined by traditional. That's why it is. It is understood to be predetermined in traditional Islam, but I do not accept that at all. Yep, it was a little unclear. It's news to me that people wanted Uthman to step down. I always viewed Uthman as an angel. No, I mean Uthman beat. I mean, look at the. Maybe when I start to do more videos on this channel, because I do want to do some historical videos. Maybe we'll do about the whole situation between Uthman and all the other Sahaba. All the other Sahaba, the great Sahaba, were wholly against Uthman. Pretty much everybody. He only had with him Marwan and some of the Banu Umayyah. Everybody had an issue with Uthman. Everybody had an issue with Uthman. Abdul Rahman ibn Mas'ud, Abu Dhar al-Ghaffari, Uthman ibn Hanif. So many Sahaba had huge issues with Uthman. Aisha had huge issues with Uthman. Talha, Zubayr, they all had huge issues with Uthman. Huge falling out. Ammar bin Yasir, he got, Uthman had him beaten, right, almost to the point of death. So it was a real issue. Even the person who had the keys to Bayt al-Mal, to the treasury, right? So the treasury, the keys of the treasury of the Muslims was with one of the Sahaba, right? And Uthman and Marwan would come and ask to try to take out some money. And the man would say, no, why should I? What is it for? This is the wealth of the Muslims, right? And then, when this man kept on refusing Marwan complained to Uthman, and Uthman told him, well, what are you doing? Don't refuse this money from us. You are just a guardian or a trustee for us, right? So don't refuse us. Don't refuse Marwan anything he wants from the treasury. And so the next day during I think it was during the khutbah, it was during the Friday prayer, he did it publicly in the treasury. He said, "Oh people, these are the keys to Bayt al-Mal. I used to think I was a trustee for the wealth of the Muslims, but Uthman tells me I've been a trustee for his wealth, for him. So here," and he threw the keys back at Uthman. Find somebody else to basically do what you want and give the money when you want or whenever you want. No, there were huge issues with Uthman. Huge. He was the beginning of the downfall, really. I mean, the great thing about Umar is that he was a really strong leader, and the hypocrites had no way with him. Like normally, Muawiyah used to be afraid of Umar, and the other hypocrites would be more afraid of him. He was able to really keep a grip on people. He was a strong leader. People were afraid of him. They were afraid to do something wrong. Uthman, no, not at all. Anyway, I think we need to close this down. Yes, I'll make hopefully start to do some historical, because I do realize that one of the sticking points for people towards taking the Quran more seriously is they keep on thinking, but this is how the Sahaba viewed, or this is how the people of the past viewed things, right? So it becomes a sticking point and a barrier, right? Some of the history becomes a barrier to the Quran, because people think that the people of the past understood the Quran better than you, because they were better than you, because they had no mistakes, etc., etc. Okay, let's call it a night today. Wait, one more thing. I didn't know that Muawiyah forgot about Uthman after he got what he wanted. He didn't just forget about him. When he came to Medina, and the daughter of Uthman found out, heard that he was there, she started to wail out, "Oh Uthman, oh Uthman!" And Muawiyah asked the people around him, "Who is that? Who's this woman who's crying about Uthman?" And he says, "This is the daughter of Uthman, right? She's complaining. She's basically complaining about the injustice done to Uthman, to you." So he went to see her and told her, "Look, my daughter, right? The people have given us this authority, even though we hate it, and they are concealing. They have given us obedience, under which is hatred, and we are being forbearing towards them, despite our not liking them. And for you to be the niece of the caliph, meaning himself, is better for you than being just a woman from the Muslims. So don't let me ever hear you speaking about Uthman ever again." That was his attitude towards. He turned the whole ummah upside down on the killers of Uthman. Then when he came into power, and his daughters asking him, "Okay, where are the killers, or where's the justice for Uthman?" He told her to basically shut up and never mention Uthman again. Okay, we've got what we wanted. I always held Muawiyah high esteem because his sister was. Yeah, again, so it isn't part of the thing. Many of the they call him now the uncle of the Messenger of Allah, right? Khal al-Mu'mineen, just because his sister was the was the Prophet's wife. Lots of people had their sisters were. Do you know any of the other brothers of one of the Prophet's wives? The Prophet had a lot of the Prophet's wives had brothers. Why don't we know about any of them? Anyway, let's call it a wrap. It's getting pretty late. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.